Time, our next portion of sober to super, it has to do with time and, more importantly, how we perceive it, our approach to time. And if you're thinking by any chance that how can we manipulate time and that it's not possible, one, you're wrong. Two, go watch Back to the Future. Three, pay attention to what comes next. All right. Um, Time in the linear sense is what we see on a clock. It ticks, it moves forward, it never stops. This is a construct that we created as humans to kind of keep us on track. We started watching um, the stars, the sun come up every day. Everything, it's time is a reference for us to better navigate the world. A massive part of how our calendar works is for farming. And so we could eat better. We decided to get a better grip on when we should plant seeds and things of that nature. Now, how useful is time as a construct? So useful. That's how we meet at the same place at the same time. That's how we get together. It's how we remember our birthdays. It's how we remember how old we are when we're kind of expected to kick the bucket. So all of these portions of our society and culture and how we work, uh, it's contingent on that linear approach to time. So it works. It gets us where we need to be. We measure so much against time. Why, fix it if it's not broken? Well, I'm here to tell you that it is broken, and that reading time linearly, or perceiving it as a linear approach that cannot be stopped or manipulated, it will hold you back. It will hold you back. And there'll be like some people that you may not be able to grasp it at this point might think that I'm crazy. Or going to say, well, what the hell are you going to do? You can't turn back time. And that's fair. We can't necessarily move backwards, but we can approach it different, and that can really benefit us, guys. So the phrase here, the point of this portion of Sober to Super is stop reading the equation of time from left to right. Instead, start with what you want to equate to and work backwards. So, consider time as the equation, left to right, and then you have an equal sign. And so, this is a major fallacy in my mind. This is something that people really get stuck on. They suffer from. It's the victim's equation. And we're going to touch on that after I kind of go down memory lane here. And maybe some of you are familiar with this once I describe this concept, or at least this result in my life. But time, as for an addict or an alcoholic, it shrinks when you are in the grips of addiction, or abuse, substance abuse. Your perception approach to time, it shrinks to however long you're high. It's just a reality. Mine shrunk to about 4 hours. So why 4 hours? Well, that's about as long as the pills would last. That was about as long as I would last before the alcohol would start to wear off and I'd go into withdrawals. So 4 hours was the window of my consideration. My future was destroyed. My consideration for my well-being into the future, me growing old, all that is gone. The only thing that mattered was immediate gratification and the next purchase of pills, or the next bottle that I had to get a hold of, whatever that was. Everything into the future past 4 hours, gone, basically gone. And so I struggled severely to think about myself, even, a month into the future, let alone, years into the future. I would sit down with people and they say, well, where do you see yourself at 5 years? I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, 5 years. I'm like, dude, I'm trying to, I'm trying just to make it through the next week, and if I could even think that far ahead. And I started to notice that I was legitimately bound to this small window, and um, people continued to ask me this, and every time I was ever questioned about the future, I found myself just struggling. I found myself struggling to think of anything that far ahead, and that's really troublesome. If you want to develop goals, or if you are in this program, we're working on our future selves. That's the whole damn idea, is to make a life better for us in the future, right? And we've gotten away from that immediate gratification. That's the whole damn point of this. But depending on where you are at in your rock bottom journey, or your addiction recovery, whatever it might look like for you, I know for me, I struggled for this for way too long. I mean, I was sober years and still could not think I couldn't consider goals, a life, a vision, any of that. Even this day, like, I mean, clearly I've been working on this for some time now, and I still don't know if I can really grasp a 10-year idea of myself. In fact, like in this program, speaking about the goals, those original goals, when I was working on the 50 goals, the original timelines were 1 year, 5 year, 10 years. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do 10 years. So I shrunk it down to 1 month, 1 year, 5 years, because 10 years to me was like, I was screwed. There was like no way that I could really get a hold of my mind. I couldn't even imagine it. So it's a sad thing that I think that an addict or an alcoholic's future it just dissipates. It just vanishes, and that's from habitually only considering the immediate gratification. It's living in the moment, because only moment that matters to you is the moments that you are high and that you're using and that you're in possession of drugs or you have more alcohol. And so, as sad as that is, you've broken free of that. I've broken free of that. And now it's time to get to thinking about the future. And so, what we cannot do is we cannot be bound by what I consider the victim's equation. So, what is the victim's equation? The victim's equation is that linear perception, that linear approach to time. This, for the simplicity of saying the word equation, A plus B minus C equals me. A plus B minus C equals me. Now, the variables, if you remember math, right? The variables, A, it could be, my parents got divorced. B is, so I moved to another city. Minus C, all my social interaction, I had no friends, equals I'm me. I'm antisocial. I don't know how to talk to people. I'm lonely, and I'm not able to get a job, join a community, not able to ask for a raise, whatever. All of these things. My point being is I kind of have it expressed here in words, right? This happened, another thing happened, then I did this thing, and now I'm like this. This is what victims do. Hence the victim equation. Uh, you know, I mentioned a couple examples there, like, okay, here's another one. My wife divorced me. My kids don't talk to me. I lost my job. And now I'm depressed and bipolar and, fill in the blanks, right? So this will trap you in a life you don't want easier than anything else. If you think you are the product of your past circumstances and you're constantly adding those up in your mind, then justifying who the hell you are now, you're in trouble, my friend. You are in trouble. And so we're going to break free of that. You might ask yourself, well, how the hell am I supposed to break free of that? It's all true. It all happened. Yeah, it all happened, but it doesn't have to own your thoughts. It doesn't have to just, be the landlord in your mind with all the real estate, owning what the hell you think about. So if you are dwelling on the past and that's what you think adds up to who you are now, yeah, you are in trouble. But I've got good news. We can break free of that. And so here we can work from the future. Take that equal sign We have that equal sign in that equation. We're going to work from the other side of it. Instead of saying all this stuff adds up to who I am now equals me, we're going to say, what do I want to equal? What do I want to be in the future? I'm going to think of that. Oh, okay, this is what that looks like. So what has to happen now to get there? We're going to flip this thing around. So as you can see, now equals ideal self doing A plus B minus D plus K. So now is important because that's on the left side of the equation, right? On the other side of the equation, you have your ideal life, your ideal self, who that person is, right? So that person wakes up early, plus a good breakfast, minus scrolling on their phones 3 hours a day, plus 2 generous texts a day to people that you care about and love. It doesn't have to be, these particular number of variables, but you can say, okay, that's what my ideal self would do. This is what my ideal self, that's what that person's life would look like. You know what I mean? So when you do that, what would be considered backwards for a lot of people, when you work backwards from the other side of the equal sign, you start to change now. You start to change this moment from the thoughts of being like that person in the future. And so the current choices, things that you're doing right here, right now, will change and eventually add up to that place or person you want to be in the future. That's exactly what happens. It's such, when I say it, I feel like it's simple, but I know that it's not easy. This is not an easy thing to do. People love their traumas. People are bound by their traumas, and depending on how serious yours were, it could be catastrophic. It could really be detrimental to your mental health and all those things. I'm not saying that those aren't real hardships. I'm not saying that you're sweeping them under the rug. I am saying that you can change your attention. You can be intentional with your thoughts and have them about the future that's free from what has happened to you, thus breaking free of the victim's equation. And so what we have here is our good old trusty diagram. And you see our little shiny person there, a little shiny person next to mastery. And so we're working from there. If you notice the little smiley face arrow, that little arrow coming that way, like it's that's our influence in the current moment, right? So if we're starting on the left there in the linear time fashion, so you have time there, the linear measurement that we enjoy and use so much, but our thoughts are coming from that little shiny individual on the opposite end of our spectrum, of our timeline there. And so if you notice, it says time is moving left to right, like I mentioned that we don't want it to perceive. However, the rest of the world, this is how this thing works. Our perception of the time reinvented is the opposite. It is the opposite of that. And so our perception and our approach to time is future oriented, meaning that we are considering our future self and working backwards. And that's exactly what that arrow is showing. And so this adds a layer to our handy dandy diagram here. And so this is not action oriented. If you remember, those are iterations there with our lessons and wins, and then you have mastery on the right. Now those are things happening in a linear fashion as far as iterations go, but our thoughts are completely flipped around. We're starting from mastery, and then we're working backwards from that. So we're considering what the master of whatever or the achiever of where we want to be, what would that person do in the current moment? And then you might want to ask yourself, well, what would that person, binge watch TV for 8 hours a day? Or would that person just eat potato chips all day? Like, these, when done correctly, they can hit you like a ton of bricks. And I get it. However, if you are to habitually consider that future person, you can change your life in a rapid fashion. So this is again impatient progress, right? We can gather impatient progress from considering our future selves and how they would behave. On a side note, uh, I want to give a special shout out to my sister. My sister is a glorious example of flipping the victim's equation on its head. My sister, uh, she lost her father, who was my stepfather. He was a heroin addict, and he hung himself in the yard, and she found him while she was in college, and then a little bit later, before she graduated college, she was abducted in Gainesville, Florida, at her not on campus, but she was in Gainesville. She was going to school and she was jogging. She was abducted. The person said he was gonna rape and kill her, and so he hit her, threw her in his car, and he said, several times, "I'm going to rape and kill you. I'm going to rape and kill you." He knocked her glasses off, knocked her phone out of her hand, and she jumped out of the car, and she saved herself, and she scarred her body from hitting the ground and escaping. He went down the road and he did rape somebody, and he beat that young girl severely. He didn't kill her, but and they caught the guy. He's ironically, they beat him so bad in prison that now he's a vegetable, and so maybe that's like a karma thing, but that's not my point. I'm here and I'm telling you this story, but my sister, she still graduated college on time. She seeks help every week. Professional help. She has taken massive trauma and completely flipped it around. She has chosen not to be bound or tethered to her past and her trauma, and she's future oriented. She's a large part of why this is so important to me, is that when I speak to her, she rarely mentions how rough our past was, but it's always more about what she's got coming around the corner. And she's an outstandingly tough and resilient person. So impressive. She's got a job interview coming up here with Google, and we all know, like, it's not a bad place to work for, right? So, anyways, that story about my sister is true, and she's a prime and serious example as to what is possible if you start to behave as your future self and stop being tethered to your circumstances that can add up to really. She could very easily be depressed and say, "Well, this is why," and nobody would argue. Nobody would argue. Oh, clearly you're depressed. That makes sense. She's chosen not to do that. So she's proof, and I know that maybe you can't see her personally, but I'm giving you my word, man. She should blow your mind with that resiliency. So, how about a takeaway, right? You can start doing this right now. You can start behaving as who you want to be right now. Some people might argue, "Oh, well, you're an imposter." Whatever. Who cares what they think? Yeah, fake it till you make it. There's some truth there. There is some truth there. I'm not saying that people should be fake in general, but sometimes as you walk, as you pretend, you start to become in a way, and you can maybe start like that, right? But like, it doesn't have to be that superficial. Does that make sense? It doesn't have to be that superficial. You can start behaving as your future self now, and you will change your current behaviors into the person that you want to be. And you can do this right now. As I mentioned before, like, would your ideal self who owns their own business, would they sit around and drink sodas and eat potato chips for hours, or not go work out, or would they eat poorly? Would they go to bed late? Would they wake up early? What does that look like? And so if you can put that person who you want to be into your thoughts, you'll change your behavior now, right? So put yourself in those shoes, even though you're not in them yet. You're not in them yet, but if you put yourself in that person, that ideal self for you, if you put yourself into their shoes, your behavior will change now, right? So your desired self becomes reality, right? This is the end result. Your desired self becomes your reality. And so where are we at? Action plans. We're in the action plans here. I want you to write down or record 3 times in a day. We'll call it 3 times in a week. So 3 times within one day, 3 times a week. So pick 3 days out of the week. And in that day, write down or record, would my ideal future self eat this? Whatever the hell you're eating. Whatever you had for breakfast. Whatever you're having for a snack. Just ask yourself and record it. Make sure you record it. Remember, observation, right? This is how we make moves here. Observation. Would my ideal self eat this? Right? You're at a drive-through. You're in the damn thing. You get your Big Mac, whatever, French fries. And you're like, okay, would my ideal self eat this? It doesn't matter what portion. I'm not trying to tell you to find the worst things that you've eaten in that day. It just is a matter of shifting your thoughts into that future self. And I'm not even saying not eat it. Go ahead and eat it, but record whether or not your future self would have. Do you see what I'm doing here? We're manipulating your thoughts and approach into the future, making it future oriented, right? And if you do this enough, you'll change your behavior in the moment. And if you change your behavior in the moment, you'll be that person. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to run it back another 3 days a week, right? So this is another set of 3 days and 3 times in those 3 days, right? So 3 times within the single day, record, write down, observe, right? Would my future self buy this? Would my future self buy this? And that could be, it could be anything, whether or not you look at your Netflix subscription, or you're at the grocery store and there's soda. Well, that's kind of going back to food, but look at your purchases. Like look at what you're buying. And do you need that new pair of shoes? Would your future self buy those shoes? And it's a possibility that yes, okay, my future self would do this. My future self would totally buy these hiking boots. I need them. My old ones are ruined. Your future self would say, yeah, do it. Get that thing, man. A new phone. It's like, oh, my future self would need a really important tool. Okay, my future self would do this, right? So again, it's not about stopping bad decisions. It's more of just thinking like your ideal self would. And that could be either a yay or a nay on what you're doing in the current moment. So it's not necessarily about the eating, even though that's really important. It's not necessarily about the purchase, because that's also important, but it's more about the future orientation of your thoughts and behaving as that future self now, right? And then, so the third one, again, pick days of the week. Actually, we want to probably do this more than 3 days. So get it done as much as you can. And because we've kind of mentioned this before, by observing our behavior within the day, is would my ideal future self have said that? So this kind of ties back into the story I had there and the other part of the program about lying when I was in jail. It's like observing your own phrases, the way that you say things, the way that you present yourself. Maybe it's curse words. Would my ideal future self drop the F-bomb? Maybe not. Maybe your ideal future self does. Maybe your ideal future self is like Andrew Tate or Wes Watson, right? That's good. David Goggins. He's got a sailor's mouth, right? He curses a lot, but hey, guy's awesome, right? So, but what does your ideal future self look like? Would your ideal future self be okay with you cursing a lot? There's a good chance that nobody's real future self should be lying. So that's a pretty good one. But monitor what's coming out of your mouth, and then ask yourself: would my ideal future self would they speak like this? Would they have said that? And would they say it differently? And so, just the consideration again will start to change your behaviors in the current moment. And you do this enough, that future desired self becomes reality. So let's touch base on our fantastic phrase, our point of this portion of the Sober to Super program. Stop reading the equation of time from left to right. Instead, start with what you want to equate to and work backwards, right? Or on the opposite side of the equal sign. Stop reading the equation of time from left to right. Instead, start with what you want to equate to and work backwards. It's the name of the game here. And this shift of how we perceive time, how we approach time, how we behave in the current moment, this will come together. It seems maybe complex at the moment, but if you just start with those simple actions, we're going to see massive difference rapidly. All right, guys, I'll see you in the next one.